Ronni Eisenberg from the Organizing Confessions. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ana Suarez, and I am the social media specialist for the Closet Works Inc., based out of Montgomeryville, PA. And today I am joined by the lovely Ronni Eisenberg, who is a well-known and established professional organizer here in the Northeast, and who has a fabulous blog called the Organizing Confessions. Check it out. You don't want to miss it. Ronni, thank you so much for joining me today. I really am
so happy to be here, Anna. This is long overdue. We've been waiting for this day.
Yes, I'm so excited. And so actually, without further ado, we can totally get started and jump in with the questions. And so I'll fire the first one. And that is, for those of our, viewers who might not be aware or really know, how would you define the role of a professional organizer? And what do you think is essential for someone in that position to be successful?
Absolutely. So people who need organization are overwhelmed. They can't find what they're looking for. They don't get things done or to appointments on time. So my role as an organizer is first an educator. I do see myself as teaching the skills of organization, bestowing it so that people can really understand the steps of organization. So when I leave, they can fly on their own. So my job is to show them how to teach the organization skills and make their lives easier. That's what I do.
Awesome. No, and that sounds wonderful. And it sounds like you would be a great teacher to have, especially and it leads me to my next question, which is, you have over 40 years of experience in this industry.
It's true.
Very, very impressive. So congratulations on all of your success. Yeah. And with that said, based on those years, what do you find to be the primary reason that your clients reach out to you and request your services?
I love this question, and this is why. Because the problems I saw 40 years ago, I still see today. And some of the solutions are the same. Of course, there's technology. It's a little more sophisticated. That's changed. But here's what hasn't. People will call me and say, I've got 20 things to do that I should have done yesterday. 40 years ago, maybe it was 10 things to do that they should have done yesterday. But on the list of to-dos, the number one reason people call me in have to do with organizing their closet and their space and their kitchens. And after that, it's paper and storage systems. So it's been really consistent. Time management is a big one, but you can't organize your time if you don't have everything else in place. So you have to have the foundation to get started.
I love that. You can't organize your time unless everything else is in place. I love that. That's a great quote. And I'll definitely remember it for myself.
Yeah, and think about it. For instance, you've got to get to an appointment on time. You're rushing to get out in the morning. There are morning routines and tips that will help make that happen. So you've got to build the foundation. Think of organization, getting organized as a big home. And there's the foundation and the steps that will help you not only get organized, but stay that way.
Awesome. No, I love that. And actually, speaking of spaces and homes, so what would you say would be the number one space that clients call you and say, I need you here ASAP?
Hands down, it's closets. Not enough closet space, not enough storage space. That is number one. It was that way 40 years ago, 25 years ago, and it's still the same today. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Interesting. And so with all of that said, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because you, for a long time, lived in New York City, which is known for small shoebox style apartments where everyone's on top of each other. So we can assume that you definitely know how to organize small spaces. So how do you utilize, empty walls or anything really in a small apartment to make sure that your clients can have the most, closet space and space in general?
Absolutely. So I've always said it's not how much space you have, it's what you do with it. And I can organize any space because I'll see the whole picture, and then I'll see all the nooks and crannies and ways to make the best use of that space. So there's so many clever things you can do. And there's so many great products today too that will help you organize this space. But I also love all of those products that you can do several things with at once. For instance, with a small space, I had a client and it was kind of like a Murphy bed. You could pull it down and it was a bed, but then when it went up again, it became a desk. And so there is that type of thinking where you want to maximize your furniture so it can do more than one thing. So that's really clever for small spaces. But even in a closet, there's always a way to make better use of the space. I call it sneaky space, things that you don't see, like maybe even above the doorway, all of that space right above there. If you think up, not always out, but up, you can make great use of your space and store things that are out of season or that you don't need to get to that often. So there are certainly a lot of ways to do it, but you have to think organized thoughts. And the very first thing you do, and I have all my clients do this, is you have to weed out, eliminate, edit, because you don't want to organize what you don't need. It doesn't make sense. So that's always step number one, whether you're moving in or moving out.
Interesting. And I love the like the sneaky, that's brilliant. And thinking organized thoughts. And actually, speaking of, what do you find to be the number one item or items in general that clients just can't let go of?
For everyone, it's different. It's mementos mostly. And whenever I do a workshop or I teach a course, and I always tell the other instructor who's hosting, I always say, these are the questions that are come up. And one is always about, what do I do with my mementos, things that I don't want to part with. First of all, I would never tell someone to get rid of something that means something to them. It could be old letters, it could be a picture, anything that's going to charge your emotions. I wouldn't do that. However, if you're thinking of organizing and decluttering, there are steps to that. And now that we're in the middle of spring and approaching summer and the country's opening up just a bit, how about decluttering for a tag sale? I'm starting to do a lot of online programs about that. So if you're going to declutter, you might as well make money doing it. So that's one way of getting rid of your stuff. Now, when I spoke before about how to find that sneaky space, for instance, there are so many nooks and crannies in a home, places where you can find a place to work, set up a little home office or a closet or extra shelving, or even a little home office that's behind doors. I mean, there's so many, they could do that in a closet. There are just so many ways to organize when you just allow yourself to think differently. That's really the key.
Thinking organized thoughts. No, I love that. I think that's wonderful. And I bet, especially for your clients with children, whether or not they live in, small spaces or larger,
Yeah.
I could maybe think that it might be a challenge for those clients because, and even for you, because you want to be able to, cater to, what the client needs, the adult, but then you're working with with a child who has their own vision and their own, idea about the space they want to live in.
Right.
So when you do work in those spaces, how do you balance that conversation between the two?
When you're organizing a child's room, it changes for each stage. A toddler, someone who's in elementary school, middle school, high school. I mean, they all have different needs, and it's a good idea when I'm starting. I'll always speak to the parents first and find out what their expectations are, and then I'll speak to the child, and I definitely want to know what their vision and expectations are, and I try to marry the two. But one thing that's so important, because I do a lot of kids' rooms, a lot of nurseries and teenagers, they just want to shut the door and tell you they don't really want you to come in. Right. I was a teenager, you were a teenager, and I've had 3 of them who are now grown, so we get it. But again, when you are organizing for a child, whether the child is 2, 10, you want to think like a child. For the little ones, you want to get down on the floor and you want to see what they see. So of course, everything has to be accessible, easy to reach, easy to understand. Depending on the age, for little ones, you want to have perhaps organize their toys in baskets. You would want to have a picture if they're pre-readers, but also have the word so they can identify what's in there. I love color coding because your memory or their memory will respond to the color first. If it's blue, it's trucks, something along those lines. And it'll help them get organized and again, stay organized. And by the way, when we start, when children are really young, they adapt those skills. It sort of becomes part of who they are and they grow with it. So I think it's really important to start young. Yeah.
No, that's super interesting. And I didn't know that about the color. And I didn't
Oh,
know
yeah.
that either about starting young.
Well, I had an 8-year-old as a client. This was one of my favorite jobs. It was so much fun. And I sat with her to discuss what it was she had in mind. What was interesting was, sure, I taught her how to fold a t-shirt and her jeans, what we were going to do with those. But I wanted to know how she saw the end picture. What was it that she wanted? Because I wanted her to own it and I wanted her to keep it. So she insisted doing all of her books on her bookshelf herself. She did not want me part of it, but we discussed the different categories and where they would go on this bookshelf. When I came back to visit, it was exactly the same because she owned it. It was part of her expression. So I think that's really important with children.
No, that's wonderful. And you're so right. Teaching children those skills at that age, that's a
Yeah,
great foundation. So, and
it's a
it sounds
great,
wonderful.
yeah, it was one of my favorite jobs, of course.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Um, so shifting a little bit again, and you actually mentioned it earlier. It's your quote, and we love it. It's not really the space you have; it's what you do with it. Do you have an example of a client who you helped, where the task was so challenging due to their limit on space that you were able to work magic, you were able to develop it into something?
Well, I have so many stories like that. After all these years, of course I do.
Mhm.
But here's an example, because closets again is the number one problem that people call me in for. And so what I do is when I look at the closet space, I'll see things that they don't. For instance, there's so many closets, especially in an older apartment. You walk in and there's like a bar right in front. But what about the side to the left and to the right, where if there's kind of an indentation, you could actually put hanging rods going front to back and even double hanging. So you get much more hanging space. And then perhaps in the middle, like a blank wall space, you could build adjustable shelving for their shoes or their sweaters or handbags, whatever it is they have. There's always a way to create better space, better usage of the space that they have. So that's a good example. And I hope you understood what I was saying, with the poles. Most people don't even think about double hanging or even triple hanging when you can, especially for little ones. And it just saves so much space.
No, you're so right. That's actually something that our owner has talked about before, is how, hanging space, going vertical is what we call it. It's not very thought of. I think people, you're right, they are very much, kind of not restrained, but they think within what's already been done. And so it's nice to have someone like you with that fresh set of eyes who can see in their space, hey, I can see where you're not utilizing. So
It's so interesting because people say, I have to clean up before you come in. And I say, do not clean up, because I'm like the organization doctor. I mean, I don't look at it the way you do. When I come in and look at a space, I immediately I'm thinking about the solutions, not just the problems, but I'm going to take the problems to another level so that we don't have those problems anymore. And so that's what I look at. How can we solve this problem? I can always find a space for children to set up to work, or for, as I said before, setting up a home office. There's always a way to do it, whether it's in a mudroom, off the beaten track, in a little nook and cranny, and whether it's in the kitchen or some area of the home, there's always a way to do it. There's always a way to do it where you feel like you have access to the things you need, whether it's a rolling cart or just these fabulous baskets where you put what you need in for the day and work. So I will never accept that there's just one way to do anything, or that they can't. No such word as can't. They absolutely can. So that's my mantra. There's always a way.
That's a great diagnosis, doctor. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Well, speaking of doctors, so, as you know, and everyone knows, the pandemic that's affecting the whole world has really, it's changed everything. And that includes, where we go and with whom. What jobs do you find yourself working on due to these restrictions? Because I imagine it must be difficult, especially for you, being comfortable going into someone's home, and it must be difficult for the client having someone come in their home.
Well, thank you, technology, so that I'll set up a Zoom call with a client and we can work that way, whether it's, again, closets. I've done this. I did this with actually a teenager not long ago. We had a Zoom call, went into her adorable bedroom and her closet, and we organized. I said, okay, let's do this and let's do that. What do you think? We organized everything by category and color. We switched things around. We made her desk more functional with better files and baskets underneath, and places to put all of her pens and everything that she needed to put her hands on quickly. So it's really fun to do that through Zoom, because especially if you're a teenager, you know just how to move that camera. And so we really got a lot done. So I've been doing a lot. Again, it's closets. And I love when you have the opportunity to build in and make every inch of space work. That's just a blessing to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing a lot of online organizing and teaching. I said I love to teach, so I've been giving a lot of workshops through libraries around the country and being able to reach a lot of people. We've had programs on clutter, time management. We're going to have one on decluttering for a tag sale, and basic organization. So, and setting up a home office. Those were the biggest requests for programs. So that's what I've been doing, and I've really enjoyed it.
Oh no, that's awesome. And that's so cool to imagine you working with a teenager and telling them to move their things. And
she liked the idea. And with a teenager, you never know, but she thought it was really cool. And I taught her how to fold, and she had so many t-shirts. And so we were able to fold it sort of Marie Kondo style, where you could see. I love that style because you can see everything in front of you. It makes so much sense. And that's the purpose of organization. Nobody needs to get organized just to get organized. There has to be a reason. It makes sense. It's going to make your life easier. So when you open a drawer and you can see everything in front of you rather than stacked, and then you got to pull stuff out and you create more of a mess for yourself. It's much easier to do it where you can see everything that's accessible.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I love Marie Kondo. She's someone that we also talk about a lot at the Closet Works. But you also, so you mentioned, you're talking a lot about home office spaces for people, because again, with the pandemic, it's changed everything, and remote work is definitely the way of the world now. And so with all that said, how can those who are working from home capitalize on the space that they already have, and transform it into a productivity hub. Because I mean, with children and pets, I mean, for me, example, even working from home, those are distractions I'm dealing with, on the daily. So do you have any tips or tricks?
For dealing with distractions or creating?
For
Okay, it depends what type of home office you need to set up. Do you need to be behind a closed door because you're interviewing or you have a lot of business calls? I mean, that's one thing. If you're just super crafty and you need a craft center, that doesn't have to be so secluded. Depends what your needs are. And so what I suggest is first identifying what it is you need and really where you need to be in the whole setting. You might have your important Zoom calls and conference calls, but if you've got little ones at home, you need to keep an eye on them too. And you know what? Today, everybody understands. They just do, because we're all in this boat together. Mm-hmm. So I would tell young moms and dads, don't worry about it. You just, do the best you can. If you have someone watching your children, and again, build a space, create a space that's off the beaten track, like I said, in a mud room, or I once built a space. It was on the landing of the stairs. It was by a beautiful window, and it was quiet because everybody was downstairs. And yet in the evening when the kids were sleeping, she could peek in and make sure everything was okay. It was just perfect for her situation. With another client, what we did, I could have used ClosetWorks then, was you can just imagine there's this huge living room. It was so gorgeous in this very old building. And what we did is we built a his and her little office behind closed doors. We just sort of built the wall out a little bit. You open up the doors, there was the desk and the shelves, and it was fantastic. And that's something you do, right?
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to see pictures, by the way, of the space that you just described, for the his and her. I think that would be beautiful.
Yeah, there's always a way. When there's a will, there's a way. And when you're open to fresh ideas, then we can make magic. Yeah.
Awesome. So speaking of organization is, a major focus among consumers, do you have, your own personal top 3 tips that maybe you even apply at your own home that you could advise?
Yes. So I've written 11 books on organization. If I took all my books and came up with the 1, 2, 3 tips that will make a difference in your life, it would be these. The number one, the most important tip ever is to prioritize. Prioritize, 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 because no matter what you think, not everything has the same value or weight. When you prioritize, you make much better use of your time. You give your time much more valuable, make it much more valuable, because you're spending time on the things or the people that you really want to. So that is key with everything in life, whether it's work, at home, doesn't matter. Prioritize, learn how to make the best use of your time. If you don't know how, or you don't know how to prioritize, ask yourself, what's the best use of my time right now? What must get done? What can wait? Ask yourself those 2 questions, your priorities will come to mind. So that's number 1. Number 2, and this is something that ClosetWorks will find really interesting, a place for everything, and everything has its place. That's your assurance against losing things. So that's really, really key. So even if you're building a little office space, or you're building a little closet, keep that in mind. Like, what's going to go where? Everything should have a little home so that you know where to go, and it saves time. You know where to go when you need it. That's another tip. Third is to simplify. Absolutely, you don't have to overcomplicate things. Streamline, create systems for yourself, like the morning routines we were talking about earlier. Create systems that will make your life easier. For instance, everyone gets up. Who's going to go into the shower when? Who walks the dog? What is everybody going to have for breakfast? Did you make their lunches and snacks for school the night before, which is really key. So things like that make your life so much easier. You just have to get into the rhythm of it. So those are 3 really important tips. I also suggest to plan. Take the time to plan because it's going to save you time. And while you're planning, you prioritize. And the last one, which is a biggie, is learn to say no. You can say no to people who request your time and it may not fall under your priorities, or who have unfair requests of your time, or who are always asking for more time. So one smart thing to do, and I always tell my clients and my students this, and those that do it are so happy, is keep track of your time, create a time log, and write down what you do, like for the next 3 days, every hour in the hour, who's interrupting you, who you're speaking to. Write everything down that you can, and then look at it, and you will see where your time goes. You will see the time traps. It could be one person calling you 10 times a day, or you may find that you're interrupting yourself, that every 10 minutes you're jumping up for a snack. So it's really, really important to do that, to guide your time.
I mean, you just definitely blew my mind, and I'm going to definitely keep those in my back pocket because I love those ideas. That's wonderful. Speaking of more great advice that you have, like earnestly, on your blog, The Organizing Confessions, you wrote an article that included a lot of great tips and tricks for 2021, getting organized this year. Do you have any recommendations on which tip, your readers should try first? If they were to pick one out of the hat, which one would you recommend?
Well, I would say, look, we all one life. We go around once. So especially with what we've been through this past year plus, I think most everyone understands how valuable our lives are and the people that are in it. So when it comes down to it, you can ask yourself, what can you live with and what can you live without? And that also helps you identify what's important to you. And then do things that you love doing. This is your time, your life. So when you're organizing your schedule, don't forget to give yourself some time to enjoy whatever it is, whether it's a book club or going for a long, long walk, whatever it is, going on a picnic with your family. Just do it. Just decide what you can live with and what you can live without, and make the best use of the time, because it's your life and your life is not my life, and what's important to you isn't necessarily important to your next door neighbor. It has to define you and who you are.
Wow.
So that's my best one right there.
No, that's great. Those are words of wisdom. I love that. And I'll definitely, like I said, I'm gonna be stealing a lot of this personally for my own use. And then my last question for you, Ronnie, is you're an organizer, and which means you must be organized at home. Otherwise, you compartmentalize very well. But when you're at home, especially for 2021, do you have any, personal organizing goals for this year, or things that you keep in mind?
The one thing that I hadn't done that I am doing, and I love it, is the online teaching. I did a lot of teaching years ago, a lot of workshops, but they were through schools or through organizations or right through the companies. And as I said in the beginning of our conversation, I see myself as an educator. I like to teach organizations. So I'm really enjoying teaching different aspects of organizing online to people. I just find it's fun. You don't have to worry that it's raining out and you're going to get there on time. Everyone does get there on time because you don't have far to go. And I just find it so much fun, interesting, and I can really get to know the students or the attendees and help them just clear out the clutter, organize their lives, organize their time, get ready for a tag sale, whatever it is that they need to do.
Awesome. Well, no, I mean, the world is definitely a better place and a more organized place for having somebody like you in it, who wants to teach people, who wants to help people. And I'm sure that the Closet Works Inc.'s, all of our customers, clients and people who are just, passing through are going to see this and go, wow, I just learned a lot because I know I did.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's why I love teaching. So, maybe Closet Works will host a workshop, and we'll do it with all your clients, and that would be fun. They're really terrific, and I think people get a lot out of it. So that's where I'm headed, right there.
No, that's awesome. And that's a great idea. But thank you so much, Ronnie, for taking the time, to sit with me, to let me pick your brain and all of your expert advice. And really, I mean, thank you so much from all of us at the Closet Works. We're very, very grateful that you took the time out.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy that we were able to set this up and make it happen.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again. And for those of you who are watching, don't forget to check out Ronnie's blog, The Organizing Confessions. And you can also check out her website, which you probably can see links below appearing right now, so that you can go visit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.